Welcome to the Legal Forum, a public service program of the Lawyer Referral and Information Service of the San Fernando Valley Bar Association. Today's topic for discussion is jury duty. Dave's guests today are Superior Court Supervising Judge Alice Hill and Attorney Kimberly Offenbacher. I'm Leon F. Bennett, and now here's the host of Legal Forum, David Hagen.
Thank you, Leon, and welcome to another edition of Legal Forum. Today's topic is jury duty, and today's show will deal with our jury system. Our focus today is on your rights and responsibilities in connection with jury service when a summons to serve as a juror arrives at your door. Let's meet today's guests. On my left, we have Los Angeles Superior Court Supervising Judge Alice Hill. Alice Hill was first appointed to the Los Angeles bench in 1995. She currently serves as the supervising judge for the North Valley District of the Los Angeles Superior Court. Just this past year, the San Fernando Valley Bar Association awarded her its Judge of the Year award. She is also a past recipient of the United States Department of Justice's highest award, the John Marshall Award for Outstanding Legal Achievement. Welcome, Judge Hill.
Thank you, David. It's a real pleasure to be here.
On my right is Kimberly Offenbacher. Kimberly is in her 10th year of practice as a civil litigation attorney. Her areas of practice include medical malpractice, employment law, and personal injury litigation. She is a mediator and member of the California Academy of Mediation Professionals. Her offices are located in Sherman Oaks, and she practices in both Los Angeles and Ventura County. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Before we get into this whole thing about jury duty, Judge, where did this jury system come from?
Well, you know, the jury system has been traced back to Roman times, believe it or not, but the jury system that we currently know is really traceable back to about 900 years ago under the reign of King Henry II. It comes directly to us from England. Prior to King Henry's reign, it was essentially for a trial. It was a trial by ordeal. For example, if you were a defendant, you would have to grasp a metal bar, a hot that had been held in flames, and if you formed blisters or had burns, that would determine that you were, under God's judgment, guilty. Another trial by ordeal at that time was to tie the defendant up in a chair, toss it into a pond, see if the defendant floated or not. If the defendant floated, that meant again that it was God's judgment that the defendant was innocent. Well, King Henry decided that there must be a better way, and he came up with the idea of 12 jurors. At that time, they were pulled from the neighborhood, so they were people who knew about the dispute and actually probably knew the parties, and they were tasked with investigating the dispute. Since that time, of course, the jury system has evolved and it's changed substantially, but when our country was founded, the founding fathers made this a part of the Bill of Rights. It's the Sixth Amendment, the right to a jury trial.
So it's certainly a historical concept and constitutional right.
Long-lasting, very important concept.
All right. Kim, as an attorney, why is a jury or a jury system important to you?
A jury system is important for so many different reasons. One of those reasons is that it allows your case to be decided by the community, by your peers, people who are out there with a real-world perspective. And they're not people who are typically entrenched in the judicial system. They're not people who have seen 100 or 1,000 different cases go to trial. And they can bring that fresh perspective to your case, to their deliberations.
I see your point, a fresh set of minds then to look at your particular case.
Exactly. And probably one of the most important aspects of the jury system, I think, is the jury selection process. And that allows the attorneys to go through a series of questions and excuse jurors that might have some type of a bias, so that by the time the jury is actually sworn in, the attorneys and the court have some kind of confidence that the individuals who have been selected to serve as jurors are going to listen to the evidence and they're going to try their hardest to make a decision that's fair in the context of that case.
In your opinion, a good thing?
a great thing.
Judge, good thing?
Absolutely.
Even though you don't get to be the ultimate arbitrator of the facts, you turn that over to a jury. Still a good thing.
Well, of course, we all think that we can be fair, but I think there has been a judgment over time that it's perhaps better to have 12 individuals who don't know a thing about the dispute decide the dispute, and that might be a fair result in the long run over many cases. So absolutely, I think it's a wonderful system.
Now, I want to get to this concept of what you do when a summons comes, but let's talk a little bit about jury service as it currently is constituted. I know that in the Superior Court for the County of Los Angeles, they have this one-day, one-trial system that's been in place for the last couple of years. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this came out of a state statute that was passed in 1996, and the state began implementing it in 1997, called One Day, One Trial. What that means is that you as a juror, if you were summoned as a prospective juror, you were required to serve 1 day or for the length of one trial. Under our old system, everyone was called for 10 days, so that was a major inconvenience to many people.
Well, and that was an objection that a lot of people have. You'd sit around for 10 days and do nothing.
Right, and that was the source of the problem in terms of no one wanted to serve jury because it was too much time taken out of their busy lives. This came in 1 day, one trial. We actually in California joined many other states. At that time there were at least 30 states under this system, and we decided to go forward. Now when the legislation was passed, the Los Angeles Superior Court, because it is the largest trial court in the world, was concerned that it would not be able to have enough jurors. We do about 6,000 trials a year. And under the old system, with jurors being called in for 10 days, we didn't need that many jurors. Under the new system, we were going to need anywhere from 3 to 10 more jurors a day than we did previously. We were very concerned we wouldn't find enough jurors. In fact, we hired a major consulting firm, and they told us we would not have enough jurors. But the leadership of the court decided we are going to try this, and we implemented it across the county. Finally, you're exactly right, in May 2002, we are entirely under the 1 day, one trial system. And I'm glad to say that we have been able to honor the promise to jurors that they won't be called more than once a year under this system. So far, we have never had to do that, and our projections are we'll be able to continue as we are.
So you get called once a year, you sit down there 1 day, or you get called to serve on one jury.
Right.
And that's your obligation for the year.
Right. Now, you can be placed on call for 5 days before you get your call to come in for the 1 day. That is something that occurs in LA. But once you step foot in the courthouse, you either serve 1 day or you'd be called to serve on a trial and go ahead and serve on that trial.
Now, I think I heard you say that Los Angeles Superior Court is the largest court system in the world?
Yes.
And is it this 1 day, one
trial
jury?
Court system.
Trial court system. 1 day, one jury throughout the whole county?
Throughout the whole county, and actually it's throughout the state of California now. It was a state statute, so everybody, I believe, all counties, all 58 counties are under the 1 day, one trial.
What about the federal courts? Are they doing this?
I don't believe so. I believe that they're under a system where you serve for a longer period of time, but I'm not as familiar with their system as, of course, I am with the state system.
And have you found that with this new system there's less objection to serving?
Well, it was interesting. Under the old system, many of the professionals, the lawyers, the doctors, were used to being automatically excused because it was too much time out of their practice or their business. The self-employed were automatically excused. When we implemented this system, we started calling many people who had never received a summons before. We did encounter some anger, some hostility initially. It was not a pleasant task for many of us to pick jurors because we were requiring professionals to serve and honor their obligation to do jury service. But as time has gone on and the word has gotten out that it's 1 day, one trial, it's really not so bad, you won't be sitting in the jury room for day after day after day doing nothing, we've found that the hostility has greatly lessened, and it's actually working quite smoothly now. Great, great. Kim, what's it like? You told me that you've worked with many, many juries, you've picked juries. What's it like for a juror from the time that they open the mail and they see that they've been chosen all the way to the time that a trial is over? Can you describe what a typical experience might be like?
Sure. It's actually a long process with a lot of different elements to it, but it can kind of generally be broken down into about 4 different areas. First, you report for duty. That's the first area. You're called in, you report to a common jury room at the courthouse, and it's much like a large waiting room. The first hour or so is spent on an orientation and a check-in. You're usually shown a video. It tells you about your jury service. And a judge will usually come down and welcome you and thank you for your time and your willingness to serve as a juror.
So a judge comes all the way out of the courtroom typically to say hello and to thank you?
They do, almost every time.
Have you done that before, Judge?
Oh, yes. We have a rotating basis in our courthouse, and every day there are jurors in our courthouse. A judge goes down to greet them. This was a change that came with one day, one trial. Part of all of this effort is to make sure that we treat our jurors with the respect and civility and kindness that they deserve. So the Los Angeles Superior Court, as well as the other courts throughout the state of California, have put tremendous effort into improving the experience of jurors.
Right.
And that's one of them, is to make sure that they meet a live judge, and the judge will explain a little bit about the courthouse and what jury service entails.
Well, one of the criticisms that I had heard was it was a thankless experience, and now I hear that a judge is coming down to thank you in advance. It's nice to be appreciated.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, back to the selection. You show up and you've gone through this
the orientation process, and after that it's really a waiting game. You sit in the waiting room with the other prospective jurors and wait to see if your name's going to be called. If it is called, then the jury selection process would begin. You'll report to a courtroom with other prospective jurors. Depending on the case, it could be as many as 40, 60 other jurors will report to the same courtroom. And at that point, the attorneys and the court will ask a series of questions and go through a process of selecting jurors, the 12 jurors who are going to serve and the alternates. That process can take anywhere from an hour to several days. It's a very important part of the trial.
Is this the portion where they ask the jurors questions about their background or their family or their friends?
Exactly.
And what are they trying to do? What are they trying to figure out? Get the bad people off?
Well, no, not exactly. They're trying to find out whether or not there's any type of bias that would prevent a certain juror from being fair and impartial in the deliberation process. Both sides, all of the attorneys involved, want jurors who are going to listen to the evidence and that are going to remain open-minded and decide the case on the evidence and the law that they're presented with.
Okay.
So there's the jury selection process, and once the jury has been selected, then that starts the third phase, which is the trial phase.
Okay.
The jury is sworn in and the trial begins. The attorneys will give their opening remarks. The jurors will listen to the evidence and receive the documents and hear witness testimony and eventually closing arguments.
And then the jury just decides based upon who they think is the best person? Do they get to decide the facts and the law, Judge?
Well, the judge determines the law,
okay,
and the jury determines the fact, and
okay,
that's facts. And so that's their job. When they go back, they have to apply the facts to the law that the judge has given them. And our hope is that the jurors will follow the law. One of the things that we do during this time of jury selection, and it's called voir dire from the French, to see and to speak. So this is the opportunity for everyone to have a look-see and see if this is a juror that will be acceptable to both sides. But one of the things that the judge will go over is, are you willing to follow the law even if you don't believe in the law? Because one thing a juror has, just as a judge does, a sworn duty to follow the law,
right,
even if they personally disagree with the law. There are some people who, for a variety of reasons, perhaps religious or others, may not want to sit in judgment or whatever. So we try to ferret that out at that early stage.
All right, so we're jumping ahead of ourselves just a little bit because this is so interesting. But the trial finishes, and then what does the jury do?
Well, the jury is instructed on the law, as Judge Hill has just explained, and at that point, jury deliberations begin. And the 12 jurors will go into the jury deliberation room, and they will pick a foreperson to facilitate their discussions and conduct voting to determine the various elements that they're trying to arrive at a decision on in that particular case. Deliberations, there's no amount of time that a deliberation can take. It can take a relatively short amount of time, half hour, hour or so, or it can run on for weeks. At the end of it, a final vote is taken and the verdict is read in open court on the record.
I mean, that sounds kind of interesting, and this is sounding kind of good, but now how would I get out of this?
Why would you want to get out of it?
I guess that's a good point.
Well, first let me say, I hope that people wouldn't want to get out of it, but I have to be honest, that is the most frequent question I receive as a judge. How do I get out of jury service? But if you are to serve as a juror, our exit polls show that you will be very satisfied with this experience. And the reason why I think you would be satisfied with this experience is because it is probably the most democratic experience that you can have in your lifetime. If you imagine you are called upon, and the way we get your name, by the way, is from DMV records as well as voter registration records. And I have, just as a side note, heard that there's a rumor out there that if you don't register to vote, and of course we should all be voting in my opinion, you won't be called for jury duty. That is not true. We also have other means of obtaining names, and particularly under one day, one trial. We are very aggressive at getting names for
So
jurors.
I've heard that people don't register to vote.
Yes,
just so they don't have to get called for jury duty, and you're saying that's not true.
that's not true.
They're still going to get your name and call you.
So go ahead and vote.
So go ahead and vote. We'll register to vote.
So once you get there, and once you actually sit on a trial, imagine you're with 12 people from all walks of life. And I have sat as a juror since I've been a judge, so I know it's from everywhere. And you're all called upon to decide this very important issue for the parties involved. So I think for most people that is a tremendously satisfying experience. Now, but there are reasons that one can be excused from the jury. The statutory reasons are fairly limited, that there's no transportation. It's excessive distance, for example, more than an hour and a half. And that usually wouldn't happen in LA because we tried to get you to a courthouse that's nearby. There's risk to your property. I haven't had that before, but theoretically. Risk of physical harm to yourself or someone else. Care of others. One thing that is not a automatic excuse.
I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Financial hardship.
Financial hardship. You hear that all the time.
Absolutely.
So that doesn't work.
Well, no, I won't say it won't work, but under this system, it really has to be an undue or extreme hardship. So the fact that your employer doesn't pay you isn't necessarily an undue or extreme hardship.
Okay.
That means that the judge needs to ask you, well, how much do you make? How many dependents do you have? What are your bills like? Those kind of personal questions are asked to determine whether this will be an extreme and undue hardship on you personally if you are not to appear. It's not enough that you're just self-employed. Not enough that it's going to be a burden on your employer. Well, we hope that most of the jurors are good workers for their employer, and it will be a burden that they're absent. And by the way, your employer, under our labor code, cannot discriminate against you. For example, demote you or something because you actually serve on a jury. This is such a protected right that even employers are required to honor your service if you are called.
But an employer doesn't necessarily have to compensate you for that time.
No, they do not have to pay, and certainly from the court's perspective, we urge and hope that employers would pay because it is such an important duty. And ironically, the employers will come in and want to use the jury, but of course the jury system comes at a cost, so we're trying to get those that can foot the bill to help assist in carrying the cost.
Now, you had said that you had served as a juror. I'm interested. Would you have a judge sit on one of your
Don't ask
juries?
personal questions.
Not necessarily Judge Hill at all, but a judge, because I have heard that some trial attorneys do not want attorneys or doctors if it's a medical case. So there's certain groups of people that you feel can't be fair. What do you think about that?
And that issue really hasn't come up much until the one day, one trial procedure was put into place. And actually, to date, I have not had a judge yet picked in a jury panel. It'd be a difficult issue for me. I think there are sound reasons why you would probably not want a judge to sit on a jury panel. But I will keep an open mind.
But you have sat on a jury.
Yes,
so
I have.
there were people that in their particular case thought that a judge could be fair and impartial.
That's right.
And it's a case-by-case basis. I imagine
That's
a
right.
difficult decision to make on a very short basis.
Right, and one of the dangers really about having a judge sitting on a panel is influence. There's a concern that perhaps it would turn your 12 jurors into essentially a single juror, because the judge could be selected as the foreperson
Right.
and would carry a lot of weight.
Right. Now, I want to go on record. I showed up for jury duty. But, Judge,
Glad to
what
hear
if
that.
I didn't? What's going to happen to me?
Well, I think there's also a rumor on the street that nothing will happen. All you have to do is take your jury summons and put it in the circular file and nothing happens. And that is truly false. The Los Angeles Superior Court has taken a lead in the juror sanctions program. This is not something we set out to do or wanted to do, but we feel a real responsibility to all those people who do answer their summons, that they don't feel like they were schnookered because they did, and their neighbor next door says, well, nothing ever happened to me. So now we have a sanctions program, and the way that works is all of us are summoned, and if we're summoned to our last known address. Well, if you don't answer the first, don't answer the second, don't answer the third, on the fourth time, we're going to send you an order to show cause, and that's an order requiring you to come to court. If you fail to come to court, you will, in all likelihood, could be assessed $250. Now, the kicker to remember in this is you're assessed $250, that's sent to a collection agency, but you're also still required to serve. You cannot buy out of jury service. If
If you don't show up, you're eventually going to have to pay $250 and be forced to show up.
Yes. Well, and then if you don't show up the next time,
glad
it
I
can go
showed
up
up.
to $750 or $1,500. And our goal here is to get folks to serve. We're not looking at this as a revenue raiser, although, of course, we're in dire needs of funds.
Right.
But this is not our purpose. Our purpose is to get jurors to serve. One of the reasons it's so important to have jurors serve is that we are required, as Kim has said, to have a fair and impartial jury, and that's culled from a fair cross-section of the community. But if you only have the volunteers or the retirees, that's really not honoring the constitutional idea of a jury. So we have to get members from the community. There's a secondary problem in that the few or the people that answer, that makes a burden for them because they're being called more often, and also a burden on their employers because they're absent more often. And that's just not fair. So we want to address that inequity, and that has been a rolling system for the last 3 years. It goes from district to district in our county, and we have them frequently.
Wow. We're getting away from the stick and to the carrot. Any amenities or special things that are provided to jurors when you show up?
Well, there are. I think that probably varies somewhat from courthouse to courthouse. I recently did serve for jury duty.
Oh, you
Showed
got
up
one too, huh?
One
Okay.
day.
All right.
And I was very comfortable that day. They provided magazines and newspapers to read. They had a TV set. They had 4 computers with internet access. They had a snack shop around the corner for lunchtime. The staff gave their suggestions and recommendations for restaurants and a walking tour. We probably had 3 or 4 breaks during the day and an hour and a half lunch, and we're done by 4 o'clock. I was able to perform my civic duty and relax at the same time. It was not a bad experience.
So they treated you good?
They treated me really well.
Well, how about special treatment then? Do celebrities get special treatment? How about lawyers or doctors or judges or anyone else?
No, there is no category of persons that is too special or too busy or too whatever to be excused. And in fact, we have had a whole host of very famous and accomplished people come in. Our Chief Justice, Ronald George, has served. Former Governor Gray Davis, former Governor Pete Wilson, Mayor Richard Riordan. We've had celebrities. We've had Diane Keaton, Steve Martin. I just read that Oprah Winfrey was serving jury. I've had Buzz Aldrin in my courtroom. We've had all sorts of folks, and they show up and do their civic duty. And if they're found to be a suitable juror by the judge and the lawyers, they go ahead and serve.
Man, that would be great. Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut even, huh?
Yes.
Great. Any restrictions on jury? Is there anyone who can't?
Well, you have to be over 18 years old.
Okay.
You have to be a citizen.
Right.
And you cannot be a felon.
Okay.
So those classes of people are excluded. If you don't fall in that group, you're excluded.
So I guess you could say if you really don't want to do jury duty, just commit a felony.
That would be one way.
And after you serve your time, then you're exempt from jury duty.
That's right.
That's a little tough.
It's a trade-off.
Wow. So why do you think then, why is it important to serve? Why should someone not just try and get out, even though it sounds like it's a difficult thing to do?
Well, I think by serving as a juror, you ensure that the cases are going to be decided fairly and impartially. And that's important not just for that particular case, but for the integrity of the system. And by preserving the integrity of the system, then the system is there and operating and functioning so that it's available for each of us,
Right.
if and when we ever do need it.
Well, and it seems to me people see the odd, the bizarre, the unique kind of judgment that comes out, or a jury that it doesn't look like was paying attention. And the answer is, you know, if you see those kinds of things, serve. You know, put more rational, reasonable people like yourself on those panels so that they serve.
Sure.
Other reasons why it's important?
Well, I think that our system of justice is really the envy of the world. And what is the backbone of our system? It's juror service and having jury trials. I don't think there's a higher form of public service other than perhaps serving in the armed forces that you can give back to your country. And as we have men and women dying overseas to preserve our way of life, I have to think this is a way you can give back and show them that this is something you want to preserve. It really calls on the highest portion of human nature. It calls on our intelligence, our sense of fairness, our ability to set aside our own prejudices and work together as a group to come to a decision, a considered decision that's very important to the parties involved. So it's truly public service, in my opinion.
Wow. Do you get paid?
You get paid $15 a day and transportation one way.
And I saw a sign that allows you to donate it to the jury room, or the fixing up the jury room, or the public announcement where we get this information out on jury service.
Right. We do ask for those who would like, they can donate it, and then we try to put that back to good uses, including upgrading our jury rooms, getting the internet access, getting more comfortable chairs, whatever it may be, so that the jurors have a better experience when they're with us.
Wow. Well, we're quickly running out of time, and I'd like to thank our guest today, Judge Alice Hill and Attorney Kimberly Offenbacher, for taking the time to pass along this interesting and important information. I know I learned a lot, and I hope our viewers did as well. Legal Forum is sponsored by this station and the Lawyer Referral Service of the San Fernando Valley Bar Association, with the hope that it will make our legal system a bit easier to understand and ultimately more accessible to our viewers. Until next time, this is David Hagen wishing you every success in your legal affairs. And that is it.
This has been the Legal Forum, brought to you by the Lawyer Referral and Information Service of the San Fernando Valley Bar Association. The Lawyer Referral and Information Service and the San Fernando Valley Bar Association have been serving the San Fernando Valley and adjacent communities for over 75 years. For further information, contact the San Fernando Valley Bar Association.